That's interesting. I want to hear more about that mentor role.
Well, we have our principal engineers, and those are our highest level of engineers. We ask for volunteers from that group who go through mentor training, and then every new hire, regardless of how many years of experience they have, is assigned a mentor for their first year, someone they can go to on a very casual basis, not have to be worried about, discipline or anything of that sort for any sort of questions that they have on a confidential level. But it's not the person's manager, so they have an outside source to help them, both with not only how to do projects, but more importantly, our culture and our project methodology and our things that are unique to our company.
That's great. That's wonderful, Jamie. Before I let you go, let me just ask, what have you learned about yourself during this process?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think I've become a better manager myself and more open to different types of individuals and how they get work done. And, in my role, I'm actually familiar with all of the calipers, so I can actually give advice on the HR side without giving away any confidentiality. I can give advice to individuals on how they might approach a person as well.
Wonderful. And just one last question. What advice would you give to someone from another company who is looking to implement a similar process to the one that you've had, which is really very well thought through and very comprehensive?
Well, I would say, definitely the telephone consultation with the third party is critical, I think, to facilitating the concept. We also encourage people to come back with questions. You have a reading list on the development guides, and we will reimburse employees for those items. I would just basically tell them to try it because we've had very good success with it, and it's led to a very open awareness of all the individuals and an ability to understand the others that you're working with.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Jamie.
You're very welcome.
So we've been talking about the benefits, certainly in terms of time in getting a new employee up to speed more quickly. But George, it's also an opportunity to make sure that the person makes the right first impression.
They're certainly going to make them more effective quicker or not. And that's really what we're looking at. We're looking at how do you help these people generate the results that the organization hired them to generate. Anything that you can do to make these people more effective will come back and help the organization. At the other end of the spectrum, unfortunately, if they don't have that kind of help and orientation and they get it wrong, they might never be in a position where they can make the contribution that the organization expected of them.
Right. That's why this is so important, George. So much can happen or not in those early stages. Let's turn now to Melinda Kennedy. Melinda's an account consultant at Caliper, and she's had some very meaningful conversations with new employees, helping them get up to speed. It's great to have you here with us, Melinda.
Thank you, Patrick. Great to be here.
Great. I know a lot of the work that you traditionally do is help clients to understand who might be best for the position. But we want to dive in on some of the conversations you've been able to have then with the people who are newly hired. How do you help them understand how to be more effective and understand more about themselves?
Well, I think the conversation that I have with them, we try to make it a one-on-one conversation, is very important because they feel comfortable with opening up and really talking about themselves. And things that I like to focus on that I think can help them in a new role is to find out about past experiences. And I tie it back to the profile. And it really helps them to see the value in the results because a lot of times there is, I think, some apprehension. What is this really going to say about me? You've never met me. How are you going to be able to talk about these things? They're concerned that if they let their guard down, especially since they're new employees or they're newly promoted, that they may say something that I'm then going to take back to their manager.
Oh, okay.
And so I talk to them about how this is just a conversation for us and how it's to help their own personal development. And it's pretty powerful. And they usually walk away from the conversation feeling like they have a really good understanding of potential missteps in the past and how they can avoid them in their new role moving forward. Interesting.
Have you also been in situations where you give them advice on how to work most effectively with their new manager?
I have. What I find in those situations, it can be very helpful if their manager has taken the profile.
Sure.
If I've had a conversation with their manager to really understand their style. I had a call once with an individual who was brand new, and he was hired before he took the profile. And I'd actually had a conversation with his new manager and the HR director, and they were very sure that they had the right person for the role. And maybe they did. I saw a lot of potential struggles that the individual would have. The individual's profile was one where the communication style was more indirect. There wasn't a strong desire to win the commitment of his team. Had a very strong tendency to get bogged down in details and second guess himself when making decisions. And when I had the conversation with the manager and the HR director, the manager was somewhat upset. She felt that she kind of missed and that this was the right person and the profile was just going to tell me that this was the right person, and it didn't really tell her what she wanted to hear. So we had set up a conversation, an onboarding call for me and the new employee, and I do believe that prior to our call, he was told a little bit about what his profile looked like. So when we had our conversation, in the beginning, I felt that he wanted to try and prove himself to me. And I explained that that wasn't the point of the call. The point of the call is that the company is investing in you. They've brought you on board. They see the talent, the potential, and this is a great opportunity for us to work together and really kind of talk about it and figure out what next steps that you can take and that you can take back to your manager so that you can start building this comfortable relationship. So we really talked about some of the areas that he struggled in, and I believe that I gave him some ideas of how to seek that help. Because I think that tended to be really important with his particular profile, was asking for the help.
A lot of times, and Melinda, I know people bring with them something that worked before, but it doesn't necessarily work now. Are there ways that you're able to coach somebody and let them know how to be most effective in this new situation? Because it's a chance for them to make a new start, right?
I was working with a woman who was very eager to move into a new role with her company. And she was working as a manager, sort of back office support, and she really wanted to be in sales. And she wanted a chance to prove herself. But the problem was that she was pushing and pushing and pushing for it, and she wasn't kind of stepping back and giving them a chance to kind of really think if this was the best opportunity for them and for her. And I think she was getting to the point where you need to either do this for me or I'm going to have to go elsewhere.
Interesting.
So she took the profile, amazing sales profile. Really good. So I talked with the HR director and talked with her current manager, and I said, she wants to be in sales, she should be in sales. She has a really great profile.
What were you seeing in the profile that you really liked?
I was seeing this very just dynamic, confident, enthusiastic individual who wanted to hear the yes. And she was a strong presenter, and she was very outgoing, yet she was in a role that was more behind the scenes. And she wanted to be out there and really kind of leading the charge. But in her profile, there was also impatience, some frustration. And it really came down to being in a role where she became responsible for others. And that was hard for her. I think she really wanted to be responsible for herself. And what was happening is, because this opportunity was not coming to her, she was sort of making it uncomfortable for other people in the company. So I had the conversation with her. And so we talked about, okay, so you have a profile that says you're pretty well suited for the role you want to be in. There's the possibility that they want to give you that chance. What do you need to do now with your own behavior for them to give you that chance? So we talked about it, and she said, I am working on these areas, and they were acknowledged by the manager that she was starting to put some effort into taking a step back and realizing just because she wanted it, she couldn't have it right then and there. So it was a matter of her using her empathy, really understanding where they were coming from, and that she needed to sort of meet them halfway. And instead of complaining and letting everybody know, to look at the other side of things, to be more patient, and while she was in the role she was in, to make the most of it.
That's a great story, Melinda. So by recognizing more about herself, she was able then to turn the situation around.
Absolutely. They did say that there had been improvements.
Excellent, excellent.
One of the biggest things that I find when I'm working with an employee on that call and they struggle with their communication skills is how important it is for them to be able to communicate with their manager. Because if they don't talk to their manager about what they're struggling with, whether it has to do with problem solving, deadlines, a difficult customer, if they are just internalizing all of it and their manager asks what's wrong and they say nothing, the manager may really think that nothing's wrong. So we tend to talk about ways of how they can approach their manager, because it may be a brand new manager that they don't know a lot about. So they need to have that conversation with them. It may be a manager that has a reputation for being difficult, or they've gotten off on the wrong foot with that manager. And we talk about the possibility of having a conversation with the manager, whether or not the employee is comfortable being on the call, talking to the manager, exploring whether or not the manager would take the profile. But I do think it is important when somebody is brought on board that the manager who's going to be working with them understands what the employee needs from them just as much as what they need from the employee.
So the advantage of being able to talk with a coach such as yourself to give some insights into how to connect most effectively with that new manager can be enormous, can get somebody off to either the right foot, or without that they could invariably end up on the wrong foot and do something that they could never recover from.
It is one of the favorite parts about my job. It's that enlightenment, it's that aha moment. And even if the person begins the call very skeptical and thinking it's going to be just a survey, or I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions and you're going to say yes or no, it turns into a really meaningful conversation. And I think it's important to know that while it is our job, it's also something that I feel passionate about, which is helping the employee. And I think it really comes through. And when they recognize that we're there to help them and that they're not just another person we're speaking to, it makes them feel good as well.
Clearly. And your passion does come through loud and clear. Thank you. Thank you very much, Melinda.
You're welcome, Patrick.
It's such an in-depth approach Melinda's been talking about, George. It really is giving someone an understanding of themselves and how they can be most effective in the new position that they're walking into. Because in many ways, something that worked before might not necessarily work now. So the more we understand that, the more effective we can be.
Absolutely. And I think that the heart of it is understanding that you hire people because of their potential, because you firmly believe that they have potential to make a difference. Potential doesn't pay the bills. What we're talking about in terms of onboarding is helping them turn that potential into results. And the quicker and the more efficiently you can do that, the better for the organization.
Wonderful. Great talking to you, George. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you to all of our guests today. For all of our listeners who sent in a question, we'll be sure to get back to you by the end of the week. Again, all registrants will receive an email with links to the recording and slides from today's presentation. To find out more about coaching new or current employees, check out our website at www.caliperonline.com. That's www.caliperonline.com. Again, if you have any other questions, please feel free to contact us at 609-524-1200 or email info@calipercorp.com. Thank you for attending today's session. We hope you learned much and that you can join us again